Cavaliers have had a weird year. Really weird year. We don't hear a lot about this team when they're doing well, and they were doing really well. They had an incredible stretch at the beginning of 2024. Darius Garland, Evan Mobley out, and this was the best version of the team that we saw. It was Donovan Mitchell, pretty much a bunch of spacers, role guys around him, Jared Allen in the middle, and they were killing everybody. And it's the best version of this team, the Donovan Mitchell era in Cleveland, that we have seen thus far. And Donovan Mitchell's not happy. He's impatient. We got to figure out who we are. And it's funny because obviously the rumors that he's not long for this town have been frequent. It feels like every time that I hear something significant about Cleveland and their basketball team, it's about their best player and how he wants to be in New York instead, and how he wants to be just somewhere else. How they got to figure out a way to trade him because he's not going to come back. And so I don't know exactly the root of all these rumors. I don't think it's just because of quotes. I think there's probably something internal and something that people know, that this guy, he never wanted to be in Cleveland necessarily. He didn't want to be in Utah longer than he had to be. And obviously he would have liked to be in New York when he's in the lineup. They're great. 22-5 in his last 27 games. 15-2 in their last 17 home games when he plays. And a lot of those games, like I said, without Evan Mobley, without Darius Garland. And he's been back for 2 games, so he broke his nose. He's wearing the mask. They beat the Sixers. He had 12 points, but they won. And they just totally got shit on by Denver yesterday. And we're entering April now. It's time to figure out who we are. And we should know who we are, because it's April. The Cavs are 11-13 without him this year. Out of those games, 8-11 when Darius Garland is playing. We have a lot of MVP candidates this season, of course, and he's one of the guys that could have been a sleeper MVP guy, because this team would literally be complete mid. I'm not going to say garbage. They would be in the play-in if he wasn't there. They were holding the 2 seed by a considerable margin. They were the clear 2 a few games for sure, and then Donovan Mitchell gets hurt, and you just sort of fall down to now they're in 3rd, but they're only a couple games out of 5. They could end up in 5 if they're not careful. So these April games are really important. Home court is really important. He's back in Utah tonight. In Utah, never a gimme, never a free win. They actually still have a positive home record, somehow. Listen, the truth about Cleveland is I never believed in this team. I never believed that they could do anything in the playoffs. I didn't think they were going to beat the Knicks. And it's not about Donovan Mitchell. Even though when he's your best player, you know, your team's going to be pretty fucking good to be a championship contender if he's your best player. Not saying it can't work with him as your best player, because he has performed at the highest level. But yeah, Rudy Gobert is your second best player. You saw how that turned out. And now in Cleveland, I'm not a big Darius Garland guy, on this team at least. Evan Mobley, same thing. It doesn't really work. Okay, this core 4, it's not right. And I'll tell you why. You have 2 big men that can't shoot. Evan Mobley, his fit into this offense and this team, it was contingent on him developing a jump shot. Everybody assumed he was going to be Chris Bosh. He can't shoot. So that's out the window. Yeah, you got 2 guys that can guard really well, and Evan Mobley, he could be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate in a different world, on a different team. And then you got 2 initiator guards who don't really play defense, and Darius Garland isn't the off-ball guy for an offense. And in a situation where Donovan Mitchell is so much better to run offense through, you just want the ball in his hands. So a guy like Conley in Utah, that was the better fit next to Donovan Mitchell. And Garland could be that, but he would have to be more of the off-ball, spot-up shooter guy that he just isn't, at least at this point. And so the best version of this team, clearly, is Donovan Mitchell with a bunch of shooters and guys that can guard multiple positions, and their team identity with this iteration. Literally, they were starting Dean Wade, Strus, of course, Jared Allen at center. That team knew who they were. And so I think if you're the front office, you got to see this and you got to try to design this team. You're going to have to make a move of some kind. If you make no moves, you're going to lose out on Donovan Mitchell entirely. You let him walk for free. But why would you trade him if you didn't have to trade him? Clearly, he's the best player on your team by a mile. Clearly, he's the guy that you want to be the guy on your team based on who's there right now. It's Cleveland. How are they going to get a better player or a player as good as Donovan Mitchell? You're not going to get a player as good as him even if you trade him. You might get younger and you build the team differently, but why would you do that if you didn't have to? That hasn't proved to be the recipe for winning this season. It's been Mitchell at the helm, with a team like this. This is the team that was winning all those games. And you can get like if you traded Evan Mobley and Darius Garland, you could get a great return. But of course, that's a bold move. Maybe you're not ready to trade your number 4 overall pick that has such a high ceiling. Maybe you'd trade Jared Allen first, even though Jared Allen, he's older and he's having the better year. He's the better player right now. He'd still give you a nice return. Then you run Mobley at the 5. Maybe that's the answer. But you got to try something. You got to do something. The pressure is on because there's no assurance that Cleveland can get a guy better than this. If Mitchell is non-committal, maybe you just don't have a choice. Maybe this guy's just going to end up playing in Brooklyn. I don't even think New York makes any sense at this point because how would that work with what they're doing? Why would they even want him at this point? They'd have to give up a lot and they'd be changing how their team is designed, which is working for them. Does that really work? Does that really make sense? Does that really get the best out of those players? I don't think so. So what, you want to go play in Brooklyn just because you like New York and just make the play-in every year? I don't think that makes sense. The only one that really makes sense to me is Miami. Miami could use a guy like him. I'm sure he'd love to play in Miami, but he has a team here. He's established this as his team. I don't really see why he'd want to leave, but obviously I'm not there. I'm not living in Cleveland. Maybe I have to go move to Cleveland and then find that out for myself. In any case, if there is a way to bring him back, you have to do it. And they know that. They wouldn't give him up if it wasn't the case. They just wouldn't. You don't just give a guy like this away. What he's able to do with their team, with such little help with these lineups. I mean, obviously these teams, they're not ready to win a championship like if they just trotted out Mitchell, Strus, Wade, LeVert, and Allen. Like, that's not winning a championship. I don't care about if they went 15-2 over a stretch. It's not winning a championship. But still, you have a blueprint. You can upgrade the role players around Donovan Mitchell, the better versions of those guys. You can replace Dean Wade with a Trey Murphy type or something like that. I mean, you can make your team better. You can trade Garland and Mobley or Garland and Allen. You can make your team better and design it around Donovan Mitchell and really see what the ceiling is, because that's a formula that we've seen it work. So a lot of pressure because yes, Donovan Mitchell could walk. All depends on what that internal dialogue is behind closed doors. You got to know exactly what he wants. If you build that team that he wants, why would he leave? I feel like there's always a way to make it work. Sometimes the owners and the GMs can be stubborn and they let their ego get in the way. You might have more power, but you're not more valuable to the franchise than Donovan Mitchell is. You have to do right by him. So listen, 22-5 in his last 27 games and 15-2 in his last 17 home games. That's pretty fucking great. What I'm hearing is their hand is gonna be forced and they got to get rid of him because this team, it's just not gonna happen this year because it's true, you don't know what this team is. The team that's gonna be playing in the playoffs, Garland and Mobley, with everybody when they have everybody back, that's not the team that went on this giant run in February and January. And having them back in the mix, it doesn't make it easier for them to play like that. It changes who they are, their identity as an offense and defense. Their continuity, it's not established to the degree that other teams are. Donovan Mitchell is not the best number 1 guy on any team. No shit. So it's not going to work this year. But you can design a team. It's possible.